Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Dick Winters. He was born January 13th, 1949, at the 96th Army Field Hospital in Frankfurt, Germany. His parents, Dick Winters and James Gurney, were both in the service. His mother, who was raised in Dunkirk, New York, was an Army nurse. Dick's father was a fourth-generation rancher, making Dick the fifth generation on the same ranch. He has one younger sister, Kathleen, who lives in Huntington Beach, California. After being kicked out of several schools, Dick finished up at Sul Ross in 1971 with a degree in industrial education, otherwise known as a shop teacher.
You ought to see the cabinets in my house.
He taught school for one semester in Houston and got so angry with the school administration and the kids, he was afraid he might kill someone, so he joined the Air Force just to make it legal. He spent 12 years in the Strategic Air Command and became a major. He then inherited some country, so he bailed out of the Air Force and came home to Brady. He lives in town now, but he has a cow-calf operation in Columbus, Texas, Colorado County, and in Menard County. He runs some exotic game animals for the venison trade, axis deer.
Yep.
Sometime ask him about this. Dick has one daughter, Amy, who's 34, who is the director of the World Birding Center in Edinburgh and is to be married in November 6th.
God willing, and they don't have a hell of a fight between now and then.
And he has one son, West Winters, who's 30 years old and has a building supply business in Houston. And he also helps with the Colorado County Ranch.
Right.
Dick believes the future of the cowman is as bright as it's ever been in his entire life.
Yeah.
And we have to keep our eye on the consumer. If we want to stay in business, we have to stay up with it. Mr. Dick Winters.
Thank you very much. I've got so much to say in so little time that I'll not try and dally too much, but I've got to say, first of all, thank you, Mr. Haley, the Board of Trustees for the library, and then all of y'all for having me here. Thank you for what you do to try and preserve the heritage that we're all so dadgum proud of, whether we deserve it or not. And it's nice to know that there's still some of us in America that have not forgot what brought us to the dance. Thank you, God. I had the opportunity to come here last year, and it was a joy, and I missed some of the things that are said through the course of the day. So I've started taking a few notes, starting with our little history lesson, starting with our moderator, Stephanie Sparkman. Stephanie, you and I are exactly the same. We grew up hearing the stories of the past. I was fortunate. I was close to some of those folks that helped make those stories. And yeah, John Wayne was one of my heroes. But boys and girls, my heroes are right here, right now. That's y'all. That's every darn one of you. And your daddies and your granddaddies. And don't forget Grandma and Mama. Because they're the ones that kept things together while the old man was out trying to ride rough horses and catch wild cows. Somebody still fed the chickens, milked the cows, doctored the wormies, kept the horses wrangled, made sure everything was fed, the children were bathed and washed, and there was a decent meal for you when you came home at God knows what hour that might have been. Those are the heroes. Those were my heroes. They still are, and that's y'all. And that's y'all too. Mr. Bob Alexander gave us a wonderful story about Mr. Dave Allison, who deserved that story. One heck of a vaquero back in his days, and mucho hombre, and forgotten by history. And he made and no offense to you now, Mr. Alexander, but made almost a disparaging remark in that the man had come from Cincinnati. Boys, 5 generations ago, there ain't no Caucasians in this part of Texas. We all come from somewhere else. Don't forget that. Me, I'm pretty damn proud. I got Scotch. Well, I always have a little Scotch in me. But I got Scotch, I got Irish, got English, got American Indian, got Polish. My gosh, there must be something to this hybrid vigor because I still got a strong pulse. Jane, thank you for making Mr. Haley come alive to those of us that didn't know him. We know his offspring, we know of his works, we've read his words, but you made him a whole lot more real to me today, especially when you were talking about his love of cowboy lore. So I won't tell you once upon a time. Y'all listen to what I'm going to say because it fits more in the cowboy thing. Bob McCoven and his dog Bear. Bob, if I was you, I'd fire that barber on that dog. Oh, Lordy. You know, Bob produces true Western stories, and if you've not read them, you really should if you share my joy of as close to a truthful rendition as we can get of yesterday. And that's going to become my new source library for stories if I ever have to come back and try and tell another damn story. You ask, who's a collector? Well, my understanding, if you're going to be a collector, you do it deliberately. I mean, you have something and you say, I'm going to go get it. I'm not a collector, I'm an accumulator, as most of the folks in here are. We accumulate crap in the barn, in the garage, in the mudroom, in the pens, in the back pasture. I don't know how many old pieces of farm equipment are laying out there trying to cripple my already crippled horses. I've been pretty successful at collecting or accumulating dry cows, bad banknotes, and a pretty terrible reputation with a lot of Caucasian ladies, but that's another story. David is a windmill man, and he doesn't get out much. Y'all be patient with him. Miss Groves, I can't wait to see your book. Don't know that I can afford to buy it, but I damn sure want to see it. You were talking about your friend Rue, and it brought back some fond memories to me because Rue shared the same love of the country as several of my ex-wives. They didn't like scorpions either. We shipped them with the dry cows. Bill Cruz, there's not a whole lot that you can say other than to direct it specifically at you, as well as Mr. Haley and all of the trustees. Thank you so much, truly, for keeping our memories alive, for keeping a source for those of us that as time goes by robs us of the fine points of the memories, as the dust of time starts to cover the folks that made all of this possible for all of us. Thank you for preserving that for us. Thank you very much. Now, the hard part comes up. That we're supposed to tell ranch stories, and all I've done so far is tell the truth, and a ranch story doesn't involve a hell of a lot of truth. If none of you know Jeff, you really should meet him before you get away because he's a crackerjack fella, so's his brother Jim. Their mom and dad raised them well. Jeff is up here to moderate because he can tell time. And he's also been running rough cattle for enough years to know where the hot shot is to bump me off the stage. I enjoy coming here because I love telling stories. Now, I'm pretty egotistical. The only thing bigger than my belly is my ego. Well, let me tell you what. My ego just got a serious thrashing, because boys and girls, we've got a storyteller here now. Whoa, Joel, jump back, Jack, you pretty cool. We've got the new king is here now. A forestry degree. You know why I got that's alien to most of us out here. That deals with things taller than this that have leaves on them. They call them trees. Coming from Seymour, he saw them as a youngster, and I'm sure they were fascinating, as I would find, a dinosaur fascinating if I saw it in my yard, because I damn sure don't see them. Farming cotton, oh boy. I grew up in central Texas in Brady, McCulloch County. We had a little bit of farmland, and I learned to hate a tractor at an early age. So I appreciate you getting out of there just as quick as you can. That story about shipping those cattle on the Proctor Ranch. Now, wasn't that interesting? Can you imagine what kind of dickens they must have had trying to row that boat? 3 steers tied there. There ain't a lot of room for the oars to work there. Gotta go fast. It's not so funny because Jeff up in that red water, that red dirt country about 2 months ago was trying to move his stock the same way. All right, enough of that. There's nothing that you can say about John Haley that hadn't been said by his cousin, his family, or the banker, so we'll throw those away. I got a whole list of notes about stories that I'd like to tell if nobody else told them, and nobody told them, so now I got to determine what to do. Ranch stories, we normally, in these kinds of settings, talk about ranch life, and that generally involves roundups in big country and bad pitching horses and fighting bulls and cows that are bogged up in mud up to here in a dang doe margay rope that breaks every time you try and pull. We forget about the other part of ranch life. One integral part of ranch life for all ranch families, and we've all had them, are those special pets in the back of your mind and at the top of your heart. That good old speckled dog. Gosh, she was a fine one, and what a good set of litters. But also, especially out here in this big country, we're kind of remote, and the kids growing up don't have a whole lot of friends to play with, and they might make a little different pet every now and then. Back in the late 20s, early 30s, my dad was growing up where Brady Lake is now. I liked it a lot better when there wasn't that much water on it, but anyway. He was growing up there and had had a chance to go with his family. They were working cattle out on the James River Ranch, and Daddy came home with little javelina hog. Weenie, the javelina. Now, of course, she was far gone before I ever came about, but the stories and the photographs are still there. If you've never had a javelina as a pet, let me tell you, they're a one-man hog. They are as protective of that man and that family as my second ex-wife was of her credit card. That's vicious, boy. I mean vicious now. Well, now this was just in the startup of the Great Depression, which hopefully none of us will live long enough to see again if you vote sometime between now and the 2nd of November. Yes. And if you don't, we will, and shame on you. Well, Weenie got pretty protective, and she stayed right around the house. Of course, things were tough. Banker would come by periodically, and he was never a welcome sight. And from what I understand, he drove an old green Dodge car that had a fairly distinctive rattle. You could hear him coming over the cattle guard, coming down the dirt road to get to the house. Weenie's bristles would come up and she'd go on point. That banker'd come out. Well, my grandmother knew, don't talk to that guy, that's the banker. we ain't none of us gonna be home. He'd sit out there, beep, beep, beep. Grandma would stay quiet in the house. Of course, Daddy Dick was in the pasture, and Papa was either in the pasture school or Mimi had him shut up too. So the banker, he'd get exasperated. Gosh dang, I got to talk to those folks about being overdue on this note. He'd get out of that car, and as soon as his hand hit that gate, Weenie was there to meet him. Now, you know, javelinas, they're not up here, but ankles are down there just about javelina height. Wenie'd meet that sucker at the gate every time. He'd open that gate, and goddamn, she ripped up more britches off of that man, they said, than he could afford. He'd turn around, get in his dang old Dodge car and drive back to town, because I can't talk to these people. He got so frustrated that he called my grandfather one day, caught him in town, and said, Dick, if you don't do something about that darned hog, I'm going to pull your note. Well, darn, it's got pretty serious now, so they called the village vet and the local stud to come out and said, Doc Hinchman, we got to do something about Weenie. Her little old tushes are just really starting to piss this banker off. So he threw her down and he filed her tushes off. Well, from that day forth, the banker could come and go anytime he wanted. Weenie never mind, but she put that vet in a tree 4 times. How am I doing on time? Got time for a little one? Yep. 2 more minutes. That's good. I won't overrun by more than about 10. It's hard to figure out now whether to talk about technology that you brought up, but instead I'll tell you a quick story that I call Whipcord Pants and Blue Bottle Flies. This occurred back in about 1929 or so, because my dad was big enough to help in the pens. My great-grandfather, John Wall, was still alive, and he was a patron at that time. And he had him a brand new set of whipcord pants, and Daddy said, oh, God, Mr. Wall was proud of those breeches. Woo, ain't they shiny, look nice. Had him a brand new pair of shop-made boots. Well, he had reached the stage now in his early to mid-60s, which was a whole lot older then than it is now, seeing how I'm getting close to it. They'd made the gathering, they were out there, and of course in those days you were mugging the calves and branding and all that, and they had one little old heifer that just wilder than a March hare, hard to catch, had her in the crowding pen. Daddy and his best friend Chinky King. Y'all jump on that heifer and get her, and everybody's dodging that heifer because she was pretty snotty. And they were trying to grab other calves and came down. She was the last one needed to be worked. Mr. Wall said, boys, I'm tired of y'all doing it. I'll show you how to do it. Well, it's a terrible fact that Mother Nature and the good Lord are mean pranksters. Because they don't let your brain know that your body doesn't do what it used to do. Your brain says, hell yeah, I can ride that bucking horse, woo! I can dog that calf until you get on that horse. Ooh. You get on that calf and it's, ooh. Well, Mr. Wall bailed in there and he chased her around the pen a time or two trying to get a hand on her. She ran by Chinky and Chinky just grabbed her and mugged her up and threw her down. Mr. Wall got on the back leg. About that time, little old bull calf that had been worked ran by, and Chinky turned over to say something to Mr. Wall, and wham, caught him right in the damn lip, knocked that tooth out, just ding. Chinky sitting there spitting blood and worrying, and oh, it hurt, and he let go. Well, Mr. Wall sitting there with his leg out like that, and about that time that little old heifer kicked, and that somehow, and only the good Lord knows how it works, but it always works this way. That little old hoof went right up those whipcord pants. She kicked and there went the britches. Mr. Wall sitting there now, and basically his starker's down there, and that heifer now is up, and her foot goes in top of those boots. So she's going off, and Mr. Wall is going with her. His breeches are back there. Finally, somebody got a rope on there, got them all disentangled. Mr. Wall started cussing at Chinky, and Chinky's opening his mouth and saying, Mr. Wall, I'm sorry. Right where that tooth had been, a blue bottle fly went right down this rope. Now, here we've got a heifer wearing a pair of boots and a half a pair of pants. We've got a 65-year-old man wearing nothing but a disgruntled smile. Chinky King with no tooth and a blue bottle fly, and his body is trying to reject it real hard. Have you ever noticed in our industry the funniest things that we ever see or ever experience is somebody else in a wreck? As soon as we get over there and see that pile of bones that used to be Felipe is moving, goddamn, that's funny wreck. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say one more thing. The man that's following me is a unique individual. I've known this man a long time. I'm a lover and a rider and a horseback rider and a pretty good hand on a windmill. This Mr. David Ligon is a pretty good hand on a windmill, and I'm sure he'll tell you all about the other part. Thank you very much.